Over the last few weeks, we got to enjoy Jahmyr Gibbs blow up, show off what he can do on the field, show off how good he is as a pass catcher out of the backfield. We saw the speed, we saw the explosiveness. But now David Montgomery is coming back, and we know what this backfield looked like earlier in the season. With these two running backs splitting carries, it was a major headache, and we need to deep dive this to see what we're getting into going forward. We're also going to look into Dan Campbell, see what he's saying about the situation and everything else. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Tap it with your finger on your phone. Click it with your mouse on the computer, whatever you need to do to get the job done, because we're deep diving these players, the waiver wire, situations of these teams, and everything else every single day. We're helping you set your lineups and helping you win your trades, and this is all year long. Click that subscribe button. Stop missing out. But we need to get to the bottom of this. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. We need to talk some ball on these two running backs because they're both great for fantasy, and it's a headache when both of them are on the field healthy together because one guy's getting the run and sometimes the other's not, and sometimes both are hitting, and it's up and down. And David Montgomery has been stealing the show for a lot of people here because you know what? He's good. He's good. He's a good grinder between the tackles. Jahmyr Gibbs is electric, and we want to see what they're going to do with this team going forward, especially with these running backs, considering Jahmyr Gibbs stepped up, did what he was supposed to do over these last 3 weeks. Is he going to get more run? Is he going to get more opportunity? Because David Montgomery's back. He'll be back on the field this week, getting touches, getting carries, back from that rib injury. And we know what that means for this running back depth chart, and it's going to be a little bit more ambiguous. Ambiguous for the good because both these running backs are solid, but still the touch distribution is going to change. It's going to be a little different. And is Jahmyr Gibbs going to handle more workload? Is he going to get more than what we were seeing earlier in the season? Is this going to be more of a split? Or is David Montgomery going to be the guy? Or are they just going to roll the hot hand? Or is it going to be less situational and everything's going to be planned out? We got to find out. We won't know till the games start being played on the real, but still, David Montgomery was hot earlier this season. Week 1, 13 fantasy points. Week 2, 12. Nothing against the Falcons. And Green Bay, 34. Carolina, 20. 4 on Tampa Bay. Then he was out. Had that rib injury that really slowed him down. And then during that rib injury, Jahmyr Gibbs steps up. 27 fantasy points and 29. Rushing for 152 yards against the Raiders. Also catching balls out of the backfield. 15 targets in his last 2 games. But when sharing the field, 8 fantasy points, 12, 9, 9. So lackluster fantasy production from him. And when we were expecting more out of him, being a first-round pick, that's also electric. And that's something we want to see going forward is him getting more touches. Now we got the splits here. So when he's in split with David Montgomery, he's getting less rushing attempts, obviously. Less fantasy points, 9.9 per game, 22.9 per game when he's out of split with David Montgomery. A little bit more in the receiving volume, although Montgomery's not much of a factor for that if you really think about it. The rush attempts increase, the rushing touchdowns increase, the rushing yards increase immensely. He gets the rushing production on top of that receiving production. A little bit more of a bump on the receiving production and a major bump on the rushing production and opportunities. And then it dwindles with Montgomery in there. But the thing is, that was before the blow-up. That was before the glow-up of Jahmyr Gibbs. That was before him going off these last 2 games. So what are we going to be rolling into here? With Montgomery, just going over what he's done on the season in 5 games, 17.42 points per game in PPR. Not much in the receiving game because that's Gibbs territory. That is what he does. That's what he's good at. But he's getting almost 20 rush attempts a game, about a touchdown a game, which is tremendous. That's huge. On pace for 20 on the season if he didn't get hurt. Rushing yards, 77 a game. On pace for 1,300 on the season. So he's a good grinder between the tackles. They have a problem of having too many good running backs. And that's not the problem for them. That's the problem for us. And you know what? If it works for them. That's the thing about it. It's a headache, but if it's working, it's working. And that's what you do in real football. But it's not always the greatest for fantasy football unless you got David Montgomery. The thing is, you're going to want both these running backs. If you had David Montgomery, you're waiting for him to come back. If you got Jahmyr Gibbs, you're kind of scared a little bit, but you know that it's a better situation than what it was earlier in the situation because he went off. And Dan Campbell is going to give us some coach speak on this, and then once he's done, we'll try to encode that a little bit, try and go over that. So let's listen to Dan Campbell real quick.
Get David Montgomery back this week. What's the plan with Gibbs? Does it go back to where it was, or maybe have you gained a little bit more trust in Gibbs for maybe it's more of like 50-50?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we know what David can do, but we know that Gibbs has gotten better every week. So we're going to ask those guys to do things they do well and that help our offense move the football. So, I don't think necessarily sitting here talking to you right now that I see Gibbs getting 65 plays. I don't see that, but he's going to get his fair share now. We know what he can be, and he's growing. So I think it'll be a little bit by committee and make sure we get those guys touches. Gibbs will get his touches.
He wasn't prepared for this question. He wasn't really thinking too hard on this. Watch him in the beginning here. Watch him right here. Watch him. Watch his reaction.
This week, what's the plan with Gibbs? Does it go back to where it was, or maybe have you gained a little bit more trust in Gibbs for maybe it's
right there. Like, shit. Like thinking of it. And you know what? He could have had an itch, but that's part of his body mechanics there, thinking through what's going on. He hasn't went through it too much, but really needs to get with the coaching staff on the game plan of what they really want to do, and really did not want to say too much here. That's also something I'm gathering. He did not want to say too much here in this part of the interview. Did not want to release any information, whatever they had. And this was earlier in the week, so probably more of the game plan was probably getting chopped up a few days after this. So really probably didn't have a straightforward answer to begin with, and that really caused problems there. Another thing that he mentioned, that he's not getting 60-some snaps a game, which is evident. Like, you're going to be playing David Montgomery, and honestly, he's going to stick to what they do best. Montgomery between the tackles, Gibbs on the outside catching balls. The thing about that is Gibbs has earned more opportunity. He mentioned that at the end of this. So really, he's saying what we think and what we think could go on, which is still a little bit of a headache here. That Gibbs is going to get a little bit more touches, a little bit more run, but it's going to be situational. It's going to be in game. And the fact that he reacted the way he did in the beginning kind of tells us that too. Like, hey, how can I tell you this if Montgomery's just running hot? If he's running hot and he's running for 8 yards per carry against this defense here, and he's the hammer finding the nail and he's nailing everybody to death, why not keep him going and just give Jahmyr Gibbs the spell job in this matchup until things run dry, and vice versa there. So that's what he's thinking hard about there too, because it's really situational. Sometimes you'll have a guy out for a series and he has a couple of good runs. Why not keep him out there if he's not winded? Why not just do it? And that could equate to the touch distribution too. That could, when you look at the numbers at the end of the game, that could affect those numbers. And the thing is, they got 2 good running backs. That is the bottom line here. They got 2 good running backs who can get the job done. And any team would want this running back depth chart, this situation here, because they got the pounder, they got the explosive running back. And honestly, seems very truthful here of what he said, that Gibbs is going to get a little bit more work. Obviously, he's not going to get all the work. It's going to be mixed up. They're going to try and lean into their skill sets. Seems pretty truthful here. And again, looking at the opportunities, when David Montgomery was in, getting about 21 to 30 of the opportunities per game. And then Jahmyr Gibbs getting a little bit less, a little bit more of the hot hand going to David Montgomery, the between the tackles work, the short yardage and goal line work, and all that stuff. A little bit less for Gibbs. Maybe it's a little bit more even, but it's hard to do even in situational aspects of football. So one guy's going to get a little bit more touches than the other, and it's probably going to be up and down, and it might be a headache. It might be as they're figuring things out, because they're not going to mathematically divide things down the middle. That's just not how football works. They got 2 good running backs. They're going to make a point to have Gibbs in there more, but how much more, it might be situational and what's going on with the team. You're going to want both running backs in fantasy football, and you're going to be starting both running backs, and just one might hit, one might not. They both might hit, none of them might hit. It's just going to be up and down, and you're just going to have to figure it out from there. The thing about these 2 running backs, though, is they're different. They're vastly different. David Montgomery is solid between the tackles. He's got a little pop in his step, but he's best between the tackles, best on short yardage. He can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. He can do a little bit of the other stuff. But that other stuff, Jahmyr Gibbs excels at. Getting out on the edge, catching the ball out of the backfield. And Gibbs can run between the tackles, but not to the degree David Montgomery does. And they both are good moving laterally. It's just that home run hitting speed. You get Gibbs out in the flat. You get Gibbs out in some space. And he's a home run hitter. And that's something you want in this offense. Kind of like an expensive version of Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell. An expensive version of that. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, they're name brands, where Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell is off-brand. They're the great value. This is something every team wants. They want a very good runner between the tackles who can hold it down, and they want their home run hitter, and that's what they got. That's what they got. And if they could live with this and really keep the chains moving, they'll mix it up very good, and the guy who's hot will probably keep it up. Now, looking at the schedule here, you got a nice schedule. It's not perfect, but many schedules we look at on the back half of the season isn't perfect, but you got some matchups here that are nice. The Cowboys game and the championship game for fantasy playoffs, not the greatest, but you got Minnesota, you got Denver, and you got Chicago twice. You got the Chargers. It's looking nice. It's looking nice. And Gibbs can catch the ball in the backfield, so really he can be used in any matchup, really. Really, if it's a passing matchup, check it down to him a few times, and really it's situational. You can't really guess game to game. You can't anymore. Gibbs is too good. Gibbs proved himself. He's going to get more touches, more work, more snaps. You're going to have to pay attention to the touches going forward, and maybe he runs away with it. But I think they want to use both these running backs, and from what we've seen and how good they've played, you should use both these running backs. So that's the answer there. They're going to use both running backs. They're going to use the hot hand. They're going to use them to their strengths, and you're going to have to pay attention to what's going on. For the versus battle on these guys, you're just going to be happy to have one of them, if not both, on your fantasy team. And you're going to have to roll the dice on some weeks. And some games, you're going to have a Monty game. Some games, you're going to have a Gibbs game. Gibbs is probably going to power up in the back half of the season and into 2024, where Monty's probably going to still hold it down. He's a good running back to hold it down. And if you're a Detroit Lions fan, I know some of the Lions fans came to this channel to watch this video because of the thumbnail, and I got you very intrigued here. I think you're lucky to have these 2 running backs. I think you're very lucky. I think this is a great time in Detroit Lions history for you guys. I like this running game. I think this is a good tandem of running backs, and you never know what you're going to get each week. For a Lions fan, that's amazing. For a fantasy football aficionado, that could be a head scratcher from week to week, but you're going to have to live with it. You got upside with both players. Can't really ask for more than that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.